Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Ellis Bennett on and he's a chartered accountant. Hi Ellis.
Hi Tom.
How are we today?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, good. We're nearly there, nearly the weekend.
Yeah, it's been a long week so far. Lots of meetings, lots of clients. Quite a few issues this week with clients, HMRC, and try and get some tax refunds back. HMRC seem to be taking a long time at the moment to process those refunds, but we must persist and we must continue.
So do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do, Ellis?
Yep. So I'm a accountant, a chartered accountant, as you rightly said. I run a company called EA Accountancy. We specialize in dealing with SMEs, young entrepreneurs, freelancers, and startup businesses. I suppose a bit of a difference to my company is we're online based only. So I will be wherever in the world servicing my clients. So I come back into the UK in December. But for the previous 6 months prior to that, when I started the business, I was operating the business all over the world. So that's from Europe to the Middle East to Southeast Asia.
Wow, very cool. So how did you get into accountancy then? Because it's not something that everyone goes, I really want to be an accountant. How did you get started?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not the most interesting topic. It's not the most fun topic, especially when you talk about figures all the time. Essentially, how I got into accountancy. It's a bit of a strange one, actually. My next door neighbour is an accountant. I used to go to the football match with him. We got speaking about his job, his career, and I was a bit undecided, especially around college time. When you choose like options to study a bit more in further depth. So I chose accountancy, business, and economics.
Wow, quite a mix.
So to be honest, my favorite one was economics. Probably I was best at economics. But when I went to university, spoke to different universities, I didn't like the sound of the economics course. And so I thought, second best option. I was also good at accounting and finance. So why not do accounting and finance? I've done it at A-level. It can't be that difficult at university. So fast forward university, I achieved a first class honours. Perfectly honest with you, it wasn't particularly hard. Mm-hmm. Then I got my first job in accounting, and it was a bit of a shock to the system, to say the least. The reason I say that is everything I learned at university compared to what I now do in practice and what I learned in practice initially is literally bipolar opposite.
Wow.
There's virtually no transferable skills, unless I was going to work for a big multinational company. That was essentially starting from day one, essentially. And it was a bit of a shock to the system. I think it was a shock to the system to the people who employed me, because it's like, well, you've done a degree in accounting and finance, we'd expect at least a basic level of knowledge. I was like, nope, this is what I've learned. This is not used. I can't use this as such whilst I'm working with you guys. Basically started from the scratch when I got my job, even though I had a degree in accounting and finance.
That's really interesting, because you'd assume that that would be a pretty clear-cut degree into job kind of path, and it would actually resemble what you're doing. But do you actually need qualifications to be an accountant, or can you go and learn straight out of school into a work placement, or how does it work?
Yeah, so there's two options. You can either go the apprenticeship route or you can go the degree route. At the time, I think it's more of a trend. Everyone just seemed to went to university. So I was like, might as well just go to university, get my degree. In terms of actually becoming an accountant, so this is where I have a bit of an issue with the industry, actually. Anyone point blank can call themselves an accountant. You don't need any sort of qualifications, any sort of experience. You can turn up the next day and say, I'm an accountant. Now, that obviously causes a big issue in the industry. From one, the amount of rubbish knowledge that's out there, and second of all, what tends to happen as such is people who aren't qualified, who aren't chartered, tend to undercut in price, because they've not seen how much hard work it takes to actually become a chartered accountant.
What is some of those chartership qualifications needed? I assume you've got to have a certain amount of time in industry, as well as maybe the degree, and back up some of the experience that you actually have. What was that process for you?
Yeah, so in terms of the process, you don't need a degree. A degree helped me in terms of I got a number of exemptions from the exams that I would be required to take. If you're starting from scratch or the apprenticeship route, you have my chartered accountant is in the ACCA. So take that, for example, you'd have about 12, 13 exams, then move on to your professional exams, but you have another 5 or 6 exams. Now, because I had a degree in accounting and finance, the first lot of exams wasn't required to do. But having said that, I think looking back again at the start of my career as such, would I prefer to avoid a student loan and student debt and go the apprenticeship route? Most likely, yes. I think it probably gives you a more well-rounded view on accountancy, whereas I started from scratch, but I had exemptions from the basic level exams as such.
So what's an average day like for an accountant?
I'll tell you my day as today. So apart from the gym and that's a pretty different topic. I start at 10 o'clock just because of the gym, and that's my general routine. Don't phone me or email me before 10 o'clock. General routine then in work. So between 10 and say 11 or 12, answer emails I've got overnight or any sort of queries clients have. Between 12 and 1 or 2 is when I like to book in client calls. So that'll be Zoom calls, either catch up with clients to see how their company's going, how I can help them further. Then say 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 new client calls. So that's clients who want to join EA Accountancy. So first of all, see how they're doing at the moment, what they need to improve on, and give them a quote essentially. I have the tendency, to be honest with you, to work really long hours. So most people finish at 5, 6 o'clock. I'll still be prepping stuff for the next day or for the next week or so at 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Yeah, it's difficult, I suppose, as a business owner that works on his own. That's probably the most difficult part. Is I'm responsible for marketing, sales, doing the actual accounts, a bookkeeper, everything else.
Yeah, so I found you basically on LinkedIn, and I think the way you sort of use LinkedIn as is really interesting, because there's a lot of freelancers out there at the moment, and there's only going to increase the amount of freelancers and people taking a step into working for themselves. That's certainly a theme that we've had on the podcast recently, and it's just really interesting the way you're positioning yourself. Is that something that the industry hasn't really done as yet?
Yeah, I feel like your typical accountant is, dare I say, an awkward introvert person, which is nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's no one of similar age to people starting out in business and can actually connect with people on that level. So say if you are in your 20s or you've got an idea, you've got a business idea, there's nowhere someone can turn to and say, I've got an idea, how do I turn that into a business as such?
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're along the same age group, you kind of get each other a bit more, rather than someone who's a lot older than you, that might not be at that same stage of life as such.
Yeah, certainly. For you, what do you think are some critical personality traits that a successful accountant would probably need?
I think a big one is the ability to tell clients they're wrong. And that sounds bad, but a lot of clients come to me and say, my friend down at the pub or something like that said you can do this. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. You really can't do that. So having the confidence in your own ability to say, no, actually, you're wrong. This is how you're supposed to do it. because at the end of the day, most clients, they don't want to pay tax, point blank. They want to reduce the tax bill as much as they can, which you obviously can do legal ways, and that's fine. But if you want to pay zero tax, then the UK isn't the country for you.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of skill sets do you think you need as an accountant?
Time management is a big one, because because you've got a lot of deadlines, and making sure clients are aware of the deadlines and being able to manage your time to fit all your clients in whilst still do the work behind the scenes. I think that's one I need to get to grips with more. That's why I said I would work until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night whilst I'm still operating the business. So time management is a big one. You have to be dedicated to it, because if you're not dedicated to it, the tax world is constantly changing. So every tax year, every year, something will change in the tax laws as such. And if you're not up to date with that, then you're giving the wrong advice, which is outdated.
What was the process like for you going from working inside a company to then working for yourself?
I thought it was quite a smooth transition. And the reason I said that is, I think for the last 2 years, whilst I was employed, it was always in the back of my mind saying, I can actually do what I'm doing now for myself and provide a better service. Now, there's obviously a lot of work that actually is required to sell the business, make sure everything's compliant with HMRC, etc. It's a bit of I remember my first day when I left my job, I was like, Ellis, what on earth have you done? This is a bit like a step into the dark, because all of a sudden you've got no clients, no regular income. And yeah, I think it's just believing in yourself, putting yourself out there, and just try and gain as much knowledge and speak to other accountants and speak to a lot of, not necessarily clients, but just speak to people about in business, how they've dealt with certain issues, I think.
Yeah. And for you, what would have been the biggest positive so far you've taken out of being an accountant?
Probably the ability to affect people's lives. And that sounds a bit deep, but people have goals and ambitions, and obviously families, etc. But being able to help people achieve that by simply looking at their figures, which sounds a bit odd, but say, for example, a client needs X amount of pounds to live on per month. We'll work the figures backwards and see how much they need to sell, for example, to achieve that, pay the tax, etc. And then they have a form or a basis of what they need to do with the business next.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never really thought of an accountant in that way. I always thought, you run a business and then, okay, I need my accounts doing, I'll go to an accountant. But
Yeah.
There's much more to it, right?
Yeah, I think the role of an accountant's kind of changing. So you can get a lot of, I call them dinosaur accountants, which once a year, they'll calculate your tax and say, yeah, that's our job done, sort of thing. I think the role of an accountant's changing. It's more of an advisory role, so a business advisory. So speak to the client about their goals, their ambitions, and their plans, and then put in place a system and stuff that they need to achieve in order to meet them goals and ambitions.
And for you, what would be some less favorable aspects of this job?
Sorry, say that again.
Some less favorable, negative aspects of this job role.
You get a lot of people who don't value what you do. They think, it's a common phrase I always use, is people know the price of everything, but the value of nothing.
Very true.
And the reason they say that is there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes to help a business out that the client doesn't necessarily see or know about. So that's always at the front of my mind is, does the client value what I'm doing? And if the answer is no, then to be honest, I don't really want to work with them. And the other negative of, I suppose, one role is dealing with HMRC. They're honestly an absolute nightmare to deal with.
Yeah.
So what are some of those things that maybe you do that the general public maybe don't understand what an accountant actually does to add value to businesses?
Yeah, so there's a wide array of stuff. So, say for example, a lot of the software I use. So we have to be able to understand the software and being able to implement systems into a software. Especially, say for example, the bookkeeping runs smoothly. Another one is a director's salary changes each year, depending on what the regulations change, say for personal allowance and stuff like that. So it's keeping up to date with tax regulations and inputting them into your client's accounts, etc., to make sure they're being tax efficient as possible.
And what's something, if you had to write yourself a job description, let's say, what is something that probably wouldn't be in that job description, but you have to deal with anyway?
If I was advertising, say, for an accountant position, in comparison to, say, my role now, what difference would there be? I don't think it's typical for an accountant to do a lot of marketing. So marketing doesn't, I'll be perfectly honest, doesn't come natural to me. Sometimes you find it a bit awkward putting yourself out there, but it's about just overcoming that and getting on with it as such.
Definitely.
If you could go back to when you were maybe at school, 16 sort of time, and you knew you wanted to become an accountant, what maybe skill would you try and pick up that you think would actually be really critical for an accountant at any sort of level? Maybe not so obvious to go down the accountant role.
I say one of the most overlooked skills is the ability to speak to people. And that probably sounds strange, but as an accountant, you deal with all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds. And the ability to speak to people, to relate to people, I think is a massively underrated skill, and being easy to work with, because you got people with a lot of egos, clients as well, with a lot of ego, and being able to speak to that person, relate to that person, but also get along with that person. I think that goes not very appreciated.
Yeah, it's totally fair enough. And would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now?
Yeah, why not? I think I'd do it differently. I probably wouldn't go to university, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, I like my job. I like dealing with people, and I like seeing people reach their goals and ambitions, and that's where I probably get the most satisfaction out of it.
Also, for you becoming a chartered accountant, was that something you wanted to do for going out on your own, or was that always an aspiration, even if you were going to stay working within a business or a company?
I think even if I was staying employed, I would have still wanted to be a chartered accountant. And the reason I say that is I think it just differentiates you between a lot of people, because a lot of people work as an accountant but aren't chartered. So being chartered to me means that you meet criterias, your decision are at a certain level. I think it makes you a more well-rounded accountant.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat, Ellis. It's been really interesting to hear about your life as an accountant. And I wish you the best of luck with your business.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Ellis. Where can people find you? Reach out, maybe if they just want to ask a question or something.
Yep. So there's Instagram. So that's EA_accountancy_LTD, or my LinkedIn, which is Ellis Bennett, ACCA, or my website, which is www.eaaccountancy.com.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ellis.
Thank you, Ellis.
Yes, thank you very much.